What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning into Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson, coming at you with another Inside Pitt practice report. We're starting Notre Dame week, but we still got to relive some of the horrors that occurred on the field at Legacy, Stadium in Winston-Salem on this Monday because, well, there was a whole lot to talk about and to dissect from that loss as we talked to head coach Pat Narduzzi for the first time this week. So we'll get right into it, and we'll start with what really dominated his Monday press conference this week, and that was his issues with the officials from this weekend. Pat Narduzzi had plenty to say about it. He was, first of all, upset with the call. You all have seen the videos. I'm sure you've dissected those videos over and over yourself. You've seen other people do it. You've seen it all over social media. You've debated about it all weekend. But Pat Narduzzi was obviously upset about it. It was a game-changing call. It was a little bit shocking just to see live and to watch it unfold. Not necessarily because I think it was the wrong call, but just, you're watching it live and it happens in real time. And I don't think anyone who was watching on TV really kind of saw what the official was able to see on the field. But either way, Narduzzi thought that Veillere reached the marker and that official had perhaps invoked the slide rule a little bit too strictly. He thought their call didn't really fulfill the intended purpose of the rule, which was to protect the quarterback, keep players from diving on him and also, protect those defenders too, so they don't have to, do any kind of, don't hurt themselves doing it, making any kind of superhuman athletic moves, trying to avoid getting an unnecessary roughness call. But, he kind of acknowledged that the call was the call and officials had to rule in a certain way, but he does want the NCAA, the ACC, officials everywhere to kind of take a look at that rule, which came into effect at the beginning of last year, ironically because of what Kenny Pickett did to Wake Forest in the ACC championship game, but wants them to look at it, look at how it's applied, especially, when screenshots of Florida State's quarterback Jordan Travis sliding well before the marker in his game against Duke, which happened later that night, but he was awarded a first down. Narduzzi's clearly seen that screenshot, and I'm sure was a little upset with the discrepancy between the call in his game and the call in that game. And I gave my take on the slide following the game, so you can check that out in my last video. But, Narduzzi, I think, has a little bit of a case here. Whether or not it actually carry weight with the people who govern the game or not is, a little unclear. But, I think he makes an argument that's at least compelling, at least worth thinking about. But this wasn't the only, argument Narduzzi had for the officiating. In fact, like I said, it took up the vast majority of his Monday press conference, in part because the Panthers were flagged 13 times for, I believe, more than 100 yards on Saturday afternoon. Narduzzi said he felt like the Panthers are, and this is a quote, hated on sometimes by officials, especially when they're on the road. He walked us through each of Pitt's 13 penalties, some of which he agreed with and some of which he didn't like. He thought Pitt got the short end of the whistle when it came to coverage in the secondary. I believe they were called for 4 defensive holdings out of 3 or 4 defensive holdings in the secondary. He thought contact went both ways, and he thought that his DBs got the short end of the stick there. He thought Donovan McMillan's unsportsmanlike conduct penalties, the 2 ones late in the fourth quarter that kind of started to make things unravel late in that game. He thought they were questionable, especially the one where he was pulling a Wake Forest player out of a pile after MJ Devonshire's interception. He said McMillan was really apologetic and emotional after the game, didn't mean to do anything wrong, but said he was just intending to get a guy off of his teammate. But and he did also say that he thought McMillan, got bumped before he got his second unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for pushing someone. And then he also thought that there was a play where a Wake Forest defender was clapping before Pitt punted to try and mix up the signals. That is a penalty if it did happen. I don't really have the film in front of me. Haven't looked into it yet. But it is a penalty if that happens. You're not allowed to do that. If you watched LSU Missouri during the bye week, it happened like 3 times. It's the first time I've ever seen something like that called multiple times in a game, let alone 3 times. They called it disconcerting signals, which I think is just like a funny name for it. But I can't verify whether or not Narduzzi has any kind of a case with these penalties. Some of these are judgment calls, but also, I haven't gone through the film to inspect each of these penalties and what the merit of any of these calls were. But what I do know is that displeasure with officiating is pretty par for the course for Narduzzi. Although this was really different, or this way this he went about complaining about the officials was different, at least from what I can remember. I've never really seen him do it this way. His public criticisms were both unmuted and really specific. He didn't kind of temper it with, "Oh, the call's the call. I didn't like it, but, we move on." He was pretty clear about which calls he didn't like and which calls he thought were fine. And then he identified which specific ones he didn't like and why. It's different from just kind of, in his post game press conferences, he tends to maybe throw some stuff off the cuff in the heat of a moment, especially after a tough loss. But he had time to sleep on these. He thought about it and still came out with these comments that will probably get him fined. And that's different. That's really pointed. That's doing this with purpose. He was pretty clear-eyed in what he wanted to do, and that's just I wouldn't I just have not seen it. I've been covering this team for now a year and a half, following them for even longer than that, and, like I said, these are comments that are gonna get him fined. He knows what he's doing when he says something like this in a very public press conference, so he's a little pissed, to be quite honest. It's pretty clear, and so, that's different. I don't expect it to have any kind of effect on how Pitt is officiated moving forward, but it's clear that he is not happy. So we'll see how that affects them moving forward. I don't expect it'll have much of an impact, but there was some other stuff to talk about from his press conference. Really, one big thing, and that was the new depth chart. There's a new order at running back. Sebo Flemister and Rodney Hammond are officially co-starters. It's been codified in the depth chart, but it's been really the case for the past 3 games. Narduzzi cited Flemister's leadership qualities and the simple fact that he's kind of the hot hand right now. And let's look at some numbers. We can flush that out a little bit more clearly. You look at the past 3 games. Rodney Hammond, 23 touches, 84 yards, 0 touchdowns. That's against Virginia Tech, Louisville, and Wake Forest. Sebo Flemister, on the other hand, 48 touches, 230 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he made 2 starts against Louisville and Wake Forest. Hammond had been the starter for the other, well, that would be 5 games, I believe, this year. I mean, let's be real for a second, though. I mean, Rodney's been the listed star, or actually, I believe Daniel Carter's gotten 1 or 2 starts in there too. But Rodney has been listed as a top tailback on the depth chart all year up until, I mean, even this point he's sharing. But he was the lone guy atop the depth chart all season up until right now, up until today. But he really hasn't been used like a starting tailback at all. It's been an odd rotation in each of these 7 games with Flemister and even Daniel Carter, like I said, getting tons of reps, not just like with Hammond and kind of coinciding with him, but over Hammond. I can't say I've been totally, massively impressed with Rodney and his relatively limited action, but he's the only one with a proven track record as far as carrying like a heavy workload or a starter's workload. So it's truly hard to judge him, on top of that, I think it's truly hard to judge him and what he's done this season, when he's gotten inconsistent workloads and inconsistent carries. I mean, Flemister's been good. He rushed for 105 yards on 23 attempts against Wake Forest, but I'm just not sure he's as talented as Hammond, and I don't think the kind of big playability that they might need from the running game is gonna be there with Sebo more than it is with Rodney. Um, it's just been odd. I have a sneaking suspicion that Hammond's still a little banged up. I know he got hurt in training camp. Andre Powell shared that with us at the beginning of the year. But, you know, Hammond's appeared in every game. And so if he's not 100%, I don't know why exactly he's been playing in every game. That doesn't exactly make sense to me. But, I can understand why, if that's the case, they might hold him back a little bit. But I don't know. The way Pat Narduzzi talks, they're treating him like he's fully healthy, and I just don't know what the issue with Hammond is. I mean, it's this is a guy who's clearly talented and has produced at a high level for this team in big games, but they just don't have a spot for him right now, and they're just not really willing to put him on the field just yet. So we'll see how it plays out. They are co-starters, like I said, so I suppose Hammond could take back his top tailback role, but who knows going forward? It seems like Sebo is going to be the guy for this team in the near future. But with that, I'm headed out of here. Thanks so much for tuning in to another Inside Pitt Practice Report. Make sure to stay tuned with us this week as the Panthers get set to take on Notre Dame, and I travel to South Bend to cover that game in person. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers, and find all of our reporting at InsideThePanthers.com. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Until next time, I'll see you.